actually touched upon a very important skill for a project program manager is how to manage stakeholders. You have to take out some time to talk to them, to get information from them, to get the things done for our project.
It is a very valuable asset.
Today, we have a truly fascinating guest and whose career arc perfectly illustrates the essential bridge between deep technical expertise and strategic program leadership. I'm honored to host Abhijit Joshi, a senior technical program manager at NVIDIA. Abhijit leads the end-to-end delivery of critical GPU-accelerated platforms. What makes his journey so intrusive is his foundation. He spends over 6 years as a senior engineer and was deeply involved in materials of lithium batteries and even pioneering work on solid-state cells.
Volumes of Delta were going up very high. And we are looking into the future like, after 3 months, we are going to have issues with some of our components. What should we do? Because if we don't do now, we will not be able to meet our quarterly numbers.
To PMP with Prachi, the podcast dedicated to exploring the complex journey of leading projects and programs. Today, we have a truly fascinating guest and whose career arc perfectly illustrates the essential bridge between deep technical expertise and strategic program leadership. I'm honored to host Abhijit Joshi, a senior technical program manager at NVIDIA. Abhijit leads the end-to-end delivery of critical GPU-accelerated platforms, including the sophisticated DGX and HGX systems. But what makes his journey so intrusive is his foundation. He spends over 6 years as a senior engineer and was deeply involved in materials of lithium batteries and even pioneering work on solid-state cells. Today, we are diving deep into his pivot, how he made the successful jump from being a hands-on engineer to taking on the role of product program manager. We'll discuss the unique challenges of managing complex hardware programs like those involving reliability and safety of battery-powered consumer electronic products, and how he developed his crucial program management skills and the ability to build stories around complex technology. Finally, we'll explore how his extensive leadership experience as the immediate past district director of International Toastmasters helped his abilities to lead large cross-functional teams across all the industries and companies. So get ready to learn how deep domain knowledge translates directly into high-impact program execution. So with that, welcome Abhijit to the podcast.
Wonderful to be here.
All right, so let's dive right into it. So tell me, Abhijit, how did you pivot your career from senior engineer to program project manager? Was it a strategic career move, or was it just like other project managers? Was it a demand of complex technical projects?
No. The story starts around 2014. And that time I felt that I enjoy working with cross-functional teams. But at that moment, I was a senior engineer. My confidence was very low. I remember I had interviews with big companies to have a great phone interview, but I would never hear back from them again. So at that moment, I thought, maybe the universe wants me to be just a senior engineer for the rest of my life. But in 2018, what happened was one of my friends encouraged me to join Toastmasters. She said it would change my life. Just because of her inspiration, I took that step. And for the 2.5 years, I really worked hard on developing my communication skills. And around that time, in June of 2021, there was an opening for a program manager. I immediately connected with the hiring manager. I had a series of interviews. Since I had worked on my communication skills so much that these interviews were seamless, I got the job I always dreamt of. So what I would say, it was a strategic move, but I had to develop my skills to get there. And if we can develop those skills, we can get any job which we always want.
Okay, that's fascinating. And that's good to know how Toastmasters helped you pivoting your career to what you always dreamt of. So we will talk about Toastmasters in detail in just a bit. Before that, I would like to ask you, I've checked your LinkedIn profile and I've seen that you have led end-to-end delivery of GPU accelerated platforms from DGX and HGX systems. So for our listeners, could you please briefly share what does it mean?
So we have two platforms. One is DGX and one is HGX. When you think about HGX, it's a modular platform. Companies like Dell, Supermicro can order these HGX and put it in their racks. But if you compare that with DGX, DGX is a complete solution which NVIDIA sells. Now it has transformed into NVL 72 or NVL 144. That's the complete solution. It's a total package. It's not like modular like HGX is.
Okay. So it seems like your technical background helped you lead such kinds of projects, although it was not planned.
Yes. So one thing which I've learned is when we work for a company, like especially for NVIDIA, we need to know what other departments in the company, what products they are working on. Because when we can understand what product they're working on, and if we can go into details of it, that can help us tremendously. Like, for example, initially, when I started working on some of the projects, I did not have that precise background, but I had to work on it to understand that product, how it is done, how is the flow of the product, who are the key players, whom should I be connecting on a regular basis. So all these things, sometimes we have to learn on the job, but we have to be ready to put in that efforts and really work with people or take time from them so that you can understand each and everything, what is happening on the project we are working on.
You actually touched upon a very important skill for a project program manager is how to manage stakeholders. You have to take out some time to talk to them, to get information from them, to get the things done for our project, which is very, very important. I truly agree. So tell me lessons learned or time when you had risk in your project and which you had to manage it, and how did you manage those types of risks? I'm sure because you have done so many technical projects and lithium battery projects, those are very risk averse. So what risk management strategies did you apply?
Before I answer that question, the one thing which I want to answer from the previous question about the stakeholders, it's very important to develop strong relationships with the team you're working on, including the stakeholders, because those relationships will help you to get your job done at a faster rate. The more people you know, the more people you understand their expertise, that can help you to get your projects done on time. That is a very valuable asset. And to answer your question about risk management, back in 2022, I was working on a Delta HGX project. Our volumes of Delta were going up very high. And we are looking into the future like, after 3 months, we are going to have issues with some of our components. What should we do? Because if we don't do now, we will not be able to meet our quarterly numbers. So we had to plan things around that. Okay, find which are the alternate components, go through the validation stage. So before we run out of our primary component, we already have a secondary component that is ready to be used. And so that we don't miss any of our quarterly numbers and make sure the company is growing at the rapid rate. Looking at the future is very, very important. Understanding those risks and then forming the team to resolve it and having the precise and the right validation process. That is very, very important.
Absolutely, I do agree. And since we are talking about these soft skills, what skill do you think was most challenging, which you had to acquire coming from a technical background?
One thing I'm learning is when we are coming from a technical background and we are going into program management, the deadlines are something which we need to follow. And that's something, keeping everyone informed about those deadlines and looking at those risks and resolving them, understanding those dependencies and working through them. Those are the things which are very, very important. And the skills is the communication skills. Our communication has to be precise and we have to use all different kinds of communication. Sometimes Slack is very, very effective. Emails might not be as effective. And the best thing is sometimes just calling the person and working with them. Those things speed up in the way you can handle your projects. So having that understanding to use which communication at what point is very, very important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can't agree more. Like, communication is the key for any project and for any program manager. So, talking about communication, tell me more about your experience as a immediate past district director for International Toastmaster. So, how was your experience? What did you learn? And I know Toastmasters teaches you a lot about communication, how to effectively communicate with your stakeholders, your team members, or anyone for that matter, especially how do you give your feedback to others in your team. So it is very important.
Back in 2019, when I joined Toastmasters, I did not know that 19 other people in the club are going to help me to become a smarter and learn different skills. So that was very, very powerful. But there was a different layers, which initially I didn't know, but my mentors encouraged me to take that one step at a time. For example, when you join Toastmasters, you're just a member. But after an year or after a few months, you can become an officer. Now, when you become an officer, there are certain soft skills you start developing. The first thing is how to be an ideal team player. Because we need to be a team player, then only other people in the leadership will trust us. And the other members in the club will trust us. And for becoming an ideal team player, there are 3 skills that are very important. The first thing is having the drive to make the difference, going beyond than what is needed. So that's the first skill. The second skill is humility. When we have the humility, it helps us to connect with our people. So that is the second skill. And the third skill is the people smart skills. And people smart skills is something comes by experience. When you're starting out as an officer, you don't have much of that skill. But as you keep on going, like go from one year to the next year to the next year, like for example, I became an officer. And then I went to the next step, that is becoming an area director. Initially, when I was an officer, I just had 20 to 25 members in the club. But when I took that next step of becoming an area director, I was responsible for nearly 100 people. So managing the communication from 2025 to 100 is a different skill. And how do you influence so many people? That is something which we have to learn. And then after a year, I got a chance to take another step. And that time I was managing over 2,500 people. I need to influence 2,500 people. So these are the different steps which we take. And every step has a different learning in it. So if we can give that time for people and understanding things, that becomes very, very valuable. First few months are harder, but if we stick to it, after 6 months, we start understanding, oh, how does it work? And we get better in those next 6 months. And once you get better, then there is a time to go and take another leap. So overall, in my Toastmasters journey, every year I have learned something. There is still so much for me to learn.
Absolutely, absolutely. I have been part of Toastmasters as well, and I know the importance and what it teaches us in every single meeting, right? You learn something or the other. So it is very important for any person who wants to improve their communications. Even if you think your communication is amazing, I think at least once you should try out to join any of the Toastmasters clubs near your place. So, uh, Abhijit, how you mentioned that you managed about 250 people in Toastmasters. So, how was that experience? It's kind of like managing an organization itself, right? So, then how did you take those learnings to your company and your organization, and how did you implement those learnings to your projects?
As I was managing, as I said, when I was a media director, my goal was to influence 100 people. And when you are in the district trio, you have 2,500 people you have to influence. So what I've learned is it's all about your skills which you develop. The first thing is you have to be a team player. And another big thing is you have to learn the skill of building the team. How do you build a team? Because if you cannot build a team, then you cannot succeed in life. And for building the team, we have to put in that effort, put in that time in other people's life, help them succeed. When they succeed, they help you to succeed. So understanding that if you want to create the village behind you, first of all, we need to contribute to that village. And once that village is formed, then you have that support. And once you have that support, you can conquer anything. And same thing applies at workplace. So when you're new, you don't know people very much. But as the time you spend, you get to know people and create those connections. And when you create those connections, then if any project is there, you can take their help and they will help you to move it further. And that skill is very, very important. The skill of team build.
Absolutely, absolutely. I do agree. It's everything done by the people. And what, as a project manager or as a leader or as a manager, all you have to do is take care of your team members. Taking care of your people, that's all matters because they are the ones who are running the show. So, absolutely, being a servant leader makes a hell lot of difference. From your experience, do you have any examples where you had to manage your schedule, cost, or any of the very important or the scope of your project? But since you had that servant leadership, you had managed to get things on track quickly.
A few years ago, when I was working on Delta HGX, there was a government policy that we could not sell our product to China. And in that moment, there is going to be a big crunch for our company. But at that moment, I was responsible for doing the program management of that specific project. So we had to come up with a plan so that we can follow the policy, but also sell our product to countries like China. And that time, when that project was being worked on, we had very tight deadlines. And having those meetings, I remember one night we even had a meeting at 12 midnight because we needed to get things done and the time was critical. So when the time is critical, you have to be there. You have to work with your team. And sometimes you don't have all the people in one location. You have people around the world. Working with their time schedule is also important. So understanding where they're coming from and how can we connect them and how can you resolve things so that you can move further and make sure the company becomes successful. It's not just the project, but the company becomes successful.
Absolutely. That is so deep. Wow. You see how managing your people can turn your project risk to making your project like keeping on track and reversing that risk. So, yes, that is very, very important. Just managing your people rather than focusing on your project. Manage your people carefully. With that, would you like to give our audience any last advice or suggestions on communications as a project manager? What should they do, or how can they improve upon their communication?
One thing I've learned as a program manager, communications is so important. And the only way we can improve it is in experiential learning. In Toastmasters, you learn by practicing. And if you don't practice it, you don't get better at it. So take that time. Toastmasters is very affordable and it can change your career. So take that time to really hone in on your skills and take your program management skills to the whole next level. And that is one thing which has helped me and it will continually going to help me in the future also.
Absolutely, I can't agree more. Toastmasters have helped me grow my communication as a project manager. So that brings us to the end of the truly insightful conversation with Abhijit. Covered so much ground today, from the intense technical challenges of successfully leading the design, development, and qualification of a lithium battery, or the projects with tight budget and schedule, to necessary skill transition required to managing the end-to-end delivery of any project. That is the people skill. Keep that in mind. Communications is the key. If you took one thing away today, it should be the power of communication and leading your people, managing your people. So with that, I would like to wrap it up and see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.